Greetings, children. Welcome back to your online learning after a short while. Today, we are starting with your unit 4, poem for the last bargain. Right? Let's first get the meaning of the word bargain. You must have heard or come across this word many a times. Bargain here, you have to take it like, a sort of pact, a sort of an agreement, you see, a concord, a sort of deal. So, what does this poem talk about? As the title suggests, the poem talks about the true happiness of life and the resources of it, like from where to get the real happiness, the real bliss of life. Here, the poet says that no power, no money, no beautiful looking things of this world can actually bring an ultimate happiness to one. The true happiness comes from freedom and not the slavery or the servility to anything or to anyone. Because what happens once someone loses his freedom? Life becomes a confinement of following and taking someone else's command. See, if you are not exercising your freedom, you will definitely be sad. Right? If you want to experience the best life, you have to be free. This is very natural. Right? So, when one gives up all those worldly desires and materialistic things, what are the materialistic things? They are so called power, the so called authority, money. It is said that money brings only comforts, not the happiness, right? It is the content of your heart, the satisfaction in your heart, the peace in your heart that actually brings the bliss to life, you see. So only then one can experience the real delight of life. You see, what is the real delight? The childlike innocence, naivety, truth, someone's honesty, and getting unconditional love, which is here in the poem offered by a small child, and how the speaker in this poem attracted, fancied by this small child, and finally how he makes an agreement, a pact with this small child. This poem is all about it, right? So we are going to start the last bargain. The title of the poem is The Last Bargain. This is in Unit 4, Poem 4. This poem was not included in your UT, but it will be there in your term exam. Right? The poem is divided over 4 stanzas, of which the first 3 stanzas talk about all the earthly desires. You see how men usually all his life run after all these things, and finally he does not. All such things do not set him free, and therefore he never finds happiness. So what sets him free is given in the last stanza. Okay, so let's go about the poem. Okay, the last bargain. A bargain is an agreement in which both parties promise to do something for each other. Someone is looking for work. That means here in the poem, someone is looking for a work. Perhaps he is a laborer, he is a daily wage earner, or somebody who's looking for an employer, you see. Waiting to be hired. Yes, that means looking for work. He strikes a bargain but thinks it worthless. He tries twice again but does not like either one. Finally, in the last bargain, when he is hired for nothing, whatever, he is happy as never before. But what is this bargain? What is this agreement that he makes? And why he thinks this is the best agreement for me? That has to be found out once the poem is learnt. Right? So let's go to the first stanza. What does it say? Okay. First stanza is here. Come and hire me, I cried, while in the morning I was walking on the stone-paved road. Sword in hand, the king came in his chariot. He held my hand and said, I will hire you with my power. You see, just imagine the picture of a king holding a sword in his hand, right? Let me just show it to you. Right, look at this picture. What does it show you? A king holding a sword in his hand. The sword is a symbol of authority. Yes, power. But nothing is permanent in this life. You see, everything is liable to be, destroyed with the ravages of time. So nothing is permanent. So what does the poem the poet say? That in the first stanza, he saw a king coming towards him while he was looking for work, and the king asked him with his sword in his hand. He came in his chariot with great pomp and showed his might. You see, the sword is the symbol of authority and might, the power. That somebody who is like the king is the symbol of power. So what does he offer? Let's go back to the poem. Right. He held my hand and said, I will hire you with my power. But his power counted for naught. Naught is the old English word for nothing. And he went away in his chariot. Okay, let's say what is said in the first stanza. Let's talk about it. What does the king's offer bring to the speaker? Right. The first stanza, it talks about a materialistic thing, which is called what? Power, authority, which is not permanent. The first offer came from a king early in the morning while the speaker of this poem was looking for work, right? The king came in his chariot. He had more power than wealth. He offered the man his power in return for the man's labor. So what did he ask? You offer me your labor and I offer you my power. The man, however, felt that the king's might was not worth much. The line, but his power counted for naught. You have to underline this line. Naught here means nothing, right? The speaker seems to be very smart and intelligent. He is looking for some sort of work, but he does not want any conditions. So if the king has to offer him power, that means he has to get work in return, which is, which will be done by the speaker. But the speaker says your power is considered as nothing. Counted means considered. Your power means nothing. What does he say? He felt that the king's might was not worth much. So what did he do? He refused the king's offer. This shows that the king's might or power or his authority was indeed not permanent. Yes. Therefore, submitting him as his slave will not bring the speaker the true happiness. As once his power is lost, he will no longer be able to please the poet, the speaker. And he has to work according to the king's wish. Right, power is not permanent. Nothing is permanent in this world. Once the king will lose the power, his authority, or if he is defeated by some other king or his rival, what will happen to the poet's happiness? He will lose his work and therefore his happiness. So he thought, he worked, he acted smartly. What does he think? He thinks that this is an utter slavery. And slavery of any type cannot bring happiness to anyone. So he refused this offer from the king as he was not ready to lose his freedom. This is very important line here, children. Power counted for naught. This line is important for your reference to context answers. Not here referred as nothing. means someone's power is equal to nothing because it is not permanent, as beauty is not permanent. You see, so power does not last for longer. Once the king loses his might, his authority, his power, it is the speaker who has to suffer. So he did not accept the king's offer. That means he could not come to a bargain. He could not make a deal. He could not make an agreement with the king's offer. So the first offer was turned down. Let's see what and who is going to bring him another offer. Right, let's read the second stanza. In the heat of the midday, the houses stood with shut doors. I wandered along the crooked lane. An old man came out with his bag of gold. He pondered and said, I will hire you with my money. Oh, he weighed his coins one by one, but I turned away. Okay, all right. So in the second stanza, see, in the first stanza, who came to the speaker? A powerful king came with his might, his power. But because power is not the synonym of real happiness, the speaker could not make any deal with him, and the deal had to be turned down, and the king had to go away in his chariot. Thus, in the second stanza, which another earthy materialistic thing is talked about? That is prosperity. Prosperity in the form of money and riches. Right? Gold, silver, anything. Right. The second stanza is all about the offer from an affluent man. The offer came in the midday when it was really very hot. Go back to the first line. In the heat of the midday shows that it was really hot. Right? Sometimes in the middle of the day. And the houses stood with shut door. Perhaps because it was too hot outside, the residents thought it's better to keep the doors shut. Okay, this is shown by the first line, and we guess that it was terribly hot as the doors were kept shut to prevent the houses from getting even hotter, right, as the heat would enter the house. The word crooked refers to bent, means a lane that took turn into somewhere else, right? The word pondered here means considered, you see, thought. An old man offered him a lot of gold in return for his labor. Whose labor? The man who was looking for work. That is why this laborer who was looking for work, he was not much impressed with this affluent man, because this rich person who has come to offer him work, he came, boasting about his money, his gold. So, the wealth did not attract him. Why? Because to him, freedom is more important than becoming a slave of gold. So what did he do? He refused that offer also. The speaker again had to turn down this proposal from an affluent man, from a rich man, as he had to work according to the rich man's wish, and he had to take orders from him. Moreover, once the rich man loses his riches and affluence, what happens to the speaker? The speaker will again become sad. He will no longer be able to please himself. And the rich man will not provide the speaker with any sort of happiness, you see. So that means even money and riches also does not bring a happy smile that is eternal forever on anyone's face, because that involves someone else's slavery and at the cost of losing your own freedom. Yeah, if you want money, then you have to take orders from someone, you see. Very simple. So, even the second offer was turned down by the speaker. You see, somebody who comes with a bag of money. You see, let me show you the picture. Yeah, look at the picture. A man holding money bags, you see, everywhere. It's very, sometimes what happens, people are taken, carried away with the proposal of getting more money and more riches and more comforts. But then finally they end up suffering a lot. So that means money can only bring comforts but not happiness. You see, the real happiness comes when we come out of our, the shackles of all these earthy things that bring only comforts but not the happiness. Happiness comes from a very simple and a very peaceful way of living, not so very rich, right? So it's very difficult, same thing, to submit himself to the comforts brought by the prosperity, the rich things, money and so-called gold or whatever. So the speaker had to turn down this offer also, because at no cost he was ready to lose his freedom. He was not ready to take commands from anyone. He here also in the second stanza he acted smartly. He did not make any deal with the affluent men. Why? Because he knew money cannot last forever. And it cannot. It may come and it may go. Right? So once it is lost, the affluent men will no longer be able to please the speaker. And therefore, it will be something like no money, no riches, and no happiness then, therefore. So he turned down that offer also. Right? Let's go back to the poem again. It was evening. The garden hedge was all aflower. The fair maid came out and said, I will hire you with a smile. Her smile paled and melted into tears, and she went back alone into the dark. Okay. Now, another earthy thing, the worldly desire, that is so-called beauty. Beauty of woman. This is also regarded as, not a permanent thing. Something which is not permanent cannot bring eternal peace and the permanent bliss to life. This is what is said in this stanza. See, once he turned down 2 offers by the time it was already evening, right? Evening time. He started feeling there was natural beauty all around. You see, the word a flower in this line, the first line of third stanza, refers to a hedge full of beautiful, tender flowers all over. There were flowers in the hedge. A beautiful girl came to the man. She gave a pretty smile. And what she offered? She offered to give the man all her smiles in return for his labor. So everybody, whoever made an offer to this man who was looking for work, they asked for his labor in return of something that they will give. In the first stanza, the king offered his power and asked for his labor, which was turned down. In the second stanza, an affluent man offered his money, his gold, or whatever his riches were, in return for his labor, which was again turned down. Now a beautiful maiden is also offering all her smile and beauty in return of this man's labor, work. However, the man found that her happiness was only sorrow in disguise. How? The beautiful maiden is not happy with something, because what happens if this beautiful maiden loses her beauty by chance, or by, something happens with her? She will stop smiling and she would be upset with things. So this way, the speaker also will have to be unhappy with her. So he refused that offer also. He wanted to work and be with someone without sacrificing his own freedom. That means he will lose his freedom of smiling. He has to smile when the maiden is happy. He has to cry when the maiden is unhappy. So he has to take and follow orders of what the maiden will tell him to do. Right? So again, this will not work. So he refused that offer also. He wanted to work and be with somebody without sacrificing his own freedom. And he was not willing to be abided by laws set by others. You see, this is what I'm trying to say here. He did not want to work on conditions laid by others, as that means he will be a slave and nothing. And he did not want to be a victim of servility of any sort, under any powerful, rich, or a beautified person. So he got away from this beautiful woman too. And he continued his search for someone else who could hire him for nothing. He was ready to offer his labor, but he did not want to follow someone else's orders. Right, let's see if he is finding one such person in his life where he can be hired. Let's go to the final stanza. You see the last line of the third stanza, her smile paled. Paled here refers to what happens if the beautiful maiden's smile is faded away and the smile is turned into tears. That means I also have to be, I here refers to the speaker in the poem, also will have to be sad, upset and not happy. In short, her smile will be turned into tears of unhappiness. So before such thing happens, he turned down the beautiful maiden's offer too. Right, let's go to the last stanza. The sun glistened on the sand and the sea waves broke waywardly. A child sat playing with shells. He raised his head and seemed to know me and said, I hire you with nothing. This line has to be underlined in your textbook. From henceforward, that bargain struck in child's play made me a free man. Right. Very beautiful thing has been said here in this stanza. You see, in the final stanza, ultimately the man came to a seashore. You see, he was looking for something, somewhere to be hired where he does not have to negotiate with his exercise of freedom. He wanted to be a free man. You see, there, somewhere on the seashore, he found a small child playing with shells. The child offered to take his service in return for nothing. You see, the child himself was free from all worldly desires of, becoming powerful, becoming rich, becoming beautiful. He did not know any of it. What does the child have? The child will have simplicity of heart, innocence of thinking, in behavior, naivety in behavior. You see, and what can a child offer to anyone? Absolutely, that is his unconditional love. And this is what struck this laborer who was looking for work. You see, the child offered to take his services, but in return for nothing, because he didn't have anything to give, and therefore he did not want to set any conditions. So he said, I give you nothing, I hire you for nothing. Something like you play with me and that's it, you are a free man. The man accepted this offer because while playing with the child, he was still a very happy man, a very free man, because he did not have to obey anyone's order. The word waywardly here means lashed along the shore in a very rough manner. You see the line, I hire you with nothing. This is a very important line. I told you to underline this in your textbook. Here, as nothing refers to not any conditions at all. The man looking for the job was much impressed with the child's naivety and innocence, as he offered the man only to play with him without any conditions. You see, that means the speaker was free to do anything at his will, even while playing with the small child. Okay, so what is the conclusion here? What have you learnt from this? What we have learnt in this poem is that power, money, or riches, or lust, or beauty could not set the speaker free, but it is the power of innocence that had the ability to break away the speaker's bondage and set him free all. Only simplicity and innocence are supreme of all. The real happiness comes from freedom, and freedom is prevented within the barriers of power, money, riches, beauty. They are like bondage, they shackle it into its chain and doesn't allow the real happiness to flow away. Freedom means what? Setting oneself free of all barriers, and only childlike innocence without any malice in heart can do it. So here, all three things, money, power, and beauty, are considered material things, earthy things, worldly pleasures that can bring only comforts but not the ultimate happiness to anyone. The child did not know anything about all these worldly pleasures. He was very simple at heart and his behavior was very innocent. What he offered was his goodwill, his love, with no conditions laid by. So the speaker has accepted the child's offer and finally made his bargain. Bargain again, I tell you, it is the agreement, the pact with him. And that is why the poem is titled The Last Bargain. That means after turning down 3 offers, finally the speaker in the poem made a bargain, made an agreement in the last stanza, in the last offer. That is why the title of the poem is, very suitable and very apt here. So the poem written by Rabindranath Tagore teaches you that if you really want to be happy, you have to set yourself free from all the worldly desires of getting more power, more money, and more beauty, and so on. Only then you will be free in the real meaning, and freedom will bring an ultimate happiness to you. Right? Let's go to the question answers quickly. These are all one-liner question answers. The first one says, who is the speaker in the poem? A man looking for work is the speaker here in this poem. The second question says, the king's sword in hand. It does suggest you what? There are 3 options: wealth, power, or more power than wealth. Of course, the king holding a sword in his hand shows his might, his power, his authority. So the second option is correct. Third one, mark the appropriate item in the context of stanza 1. Right, we have already third one. The old man offered the speaker a lot of money. Why did he turn down the offer? Well, though the old man offered the speaker a lot of money, the speaker had to turn down his offer because he understood that money cannot make anyone happy. Because money is not permanent. Gold, silver also are not permanent. Therefore, he turned down this affluent man's offer. Right. Find in the poem lines that match the following. I have nothing to give you except goodwill and cheer. I'm talking about the fourth question here. Let's say the first one. Right. You have to mark the line which paraphrases the saying. Let's say, which line in the poem means I have nothing to give you except goodwill and cheer. So that goes into the fourth stanza. Go back to the last third line. Yes, I hire you with nothing because I don't have anything to give you. This is spoken by the child to the man looking for work. Second one, her happiness was no more than sorrow in disguise. Right. That is in the third stanza. The last line, her smile paled and melted into tears. That means her smile faded away and turned into tears. Right. The king's might was not worth much. That means power does not bring happiness. Right. You just have to find the lines. The third one you will find in the first stanza. Right. So just write the lines right against the question which is given to you in your classwork. Let me talk about the last question. How did the speaker feel after talking to the child on the beach? Right. He felt the happiest on the planet, perhaps, and he felt he was a free man like never ever before. Right? So, he finally understood the meaning of the real happiness and he made his agreement with the child's proposal. So, this is where, children, we are completing the poem number 4 in Unit 4, The Last Bargain. If you have any questions, you can ask for it when we have the live session. Right? I want all questions working with poem in your CW. All 5 questions are mandatory. Kindly write down them in your CW as soon as the poem is done. Okay? Thank you very much.